Welcome to this another wonderful episode of CCTV, which is powered by, of course, you people know by now that it's powered by the Volt Post. CCTV is an abbreviation of the Coffee Club with a Volt, very fantastically put up. So today, as you know, that we bring around the tech chapters from different corridors across, of course, the semiconductor space, and of course, sometimes the deep tech startup also. Today, we have a very wonderful guest and a very seasoned personality across the semiconductor ecosystem. And to say much about him, that he's a very accomplished professional in the semiconductor space with a proven track record of managing large organizations, scaling semiconductor businesses, and driving digital transformation. This person is no other than, in front of your screen, is Suman Narayan, who's the CEO of Science Semiconductors. Suman, we welcome you to CCTV.
Niloy, thank you for having me on CCTV. I'm very grateful for being here.
So, not to waste any more time about the exciting audience, what we will be having on YouTube podcast, to start with, to understand, of course, that Cyient has been around the headlines for its latest announcements to establish a dedicated semiconductor subsidiary above the investment it has meant, that is around $100 million, I guess. So, it is where my maiden question is. Is it now that we will finally have a sand to silicon reality for India?
Thank you again, Niloy. The $100 million commitment, it reflects our ambition to make India a formidable design semiconductor hub, right? So how do we make sure that we really take concept to qualified silicon is what we're focused on. We're not building a fab or anything like that, but our focus is to build a world-class design system, really an ecosystem that helps us to do semiconductor design. We believe that India's competitive advantage is in the design linked initiatives. We've got the government really pushing this very hard with product linked and design linked initiatives, and we feel this is the right time to kind of launch Science Semiconductors.
Because it's a very salient time, as I can say that, for India, where diversified supply chains and many people are also on setting their OSATs in India. So my second question will just move up to the OSAT part, that major semiconductor companies have lately established the OSAT in India, while other few are revving up for chip design facilities in India. In the most of the cases, partnerships exchanging tech know-how has been pivotal. How do Science Semiconductor strategizes to move forward?
No, I look at the whole supply chain in semi. It is a very complex supply chain, and with all of these geopolitical issues, it really complicates it even more. So one good thing is we have good strategic symbiotic partnerships with the IP vendors today, with both the OSATs and the foundries, and also other companies like basically IP companies, and we can build a credible chip quickly for our customers. If you look at what we have done in the recent past, actually over the last couple of weeks, we've got some semiconductor veterans like Siva from Amkor and Derek, who's the CFO from Allegro Microsystems, on our board of advisors. And this is to really help us kind of bolster the supply chain. If you look at what's going on in the supply chain, there is a real need to have a US supply chain and a Europe supply chain, and also a China-based supply chain. So we're working through our partners, and we're working through our board of advisors to kind of have those multiple supply chains. The good news is I've done all of this in my past, so it should help us to kind of move faster for us in the current environment we're in.
You'll be too precise with your answers, Suman, as we reckoned also. So coming to the another part of the question is that turnkey and design services models are pretty challenging for chip companies, as you said, mentioned also. So in a time where managing supply chain disruptions, getting cost, quality parity, building, coordinating multidisciplinary teams seems to be an unforgiven challenge. So what is our comments on this?
Yeah, so if you look at why is it complex, we'd understand why things are complex in design, right? So one is if you looked at the low nanometer silicon, right, less than maybe 28 nanometer type of silicon, it's complex because it's also expensive. What do our customers want, right? Our customers want first pass execution, which means that the chip comes out working the first time. Does it happen all the time? Absolutely not. So you have to do a metal change. But this is an expensive mass that you're talking in less than 28 nanometers. So we have to make sure that the design that we're doing, works the first time. But if you look at chips that are done on top of like maybe over 40 nanometers, maybe in the 130, 180 space, you can take, you can really push your cycle time because the cost of doing another mask is not that expensive. The other complexity that I just talked to you about was the supply chain constraints, right? So you've got to make sure that you balance out the design, where you're doing the design, where you're doing the assembly and test, and really figure out whether you want to focus on power, you want to focus on analog mixed signal, you want to focus on MCUs. So the complexity comes in the recipe, the complexity comes in the time to market, the complexity comes in the supply chain as well.
Most of the very important part, my next question also will be revolving around that, is the process nodes. So I think so my audience will be very much, agile about the fact understanding that what process nodes will you be operating on? And also, are you eyeing on advanced process nodes like 3 nanometers and 2 nanometers or the nascent sub 2 nanometer technologies?
We're currently focused on mature nodes. 40 nanometers, 65, 110, 130, 180 and they're optimal for analog mixed signal and power design. These process nodes have proven reliability and cost efficiency for our target markets. We're not chasing advanced logic nodes like 3 or 2 because our value lies in the intelligent integration, not in the bleeding edge scaling applications, which are super expensive and require huge R&D. That said, we remain open to heterogeneous integration if it aligns with the customer needs. What I mean by that is, you could have multiple die on the same chip with multiple process nodes, and you can easily integrate them into one SoC type solution.
Let's come back to what the buzzword is all about. That's, of course, generative AI and abbreviated to Gen AI. So, with the growth of Gen AI, automotive computing, etc., advanced packaging represents a radical shift in the semiconductor industry. So, the pivotal question is, what packaging types are you opting today?
So, for us, both on the growth with the Gen AI and the automotive compute, our focus is primarily being on providing power to both the Gen AI chips and the automotive compute chips. We're actually working on multi-die lead frame packages that suits the power and analog domains, but a lot of these packages are pretty standard packages today. We're exploring substrate-based packaging and co-design packaging for the data center applications, but our advanced packaging like 2.5D and all the chiplet-based systems are in our roadmap for the compute-intensive applications, but will primarily be demand-driven.
As you started the interview and you said that it is a very conducive time for India to, get around with some semiconductor or chip kind of manufacturing or a chip future, as I can say, in this country. So my next question is Cyient Semiconductors engaging with policymakers to shape regulatory frameworks around chip design, IP, or domestic sourcing also?
Absolutely. We're in active discussions with METI in the India Semiconductor Mission and a lot of state level authorities and at the government in Delhi as well. Our input really focuses on IP development, domestic sourcing, and enabling a local design ecosystem, right? Just like some of the other countries have done. But we believe that India's policies will help us support the indigenous chip development, not just manufacturing, but we're also making sure that we are developing a strong design ecosystem, because the talent in India is just amazing for us to leverage and build some brilliant chips over the next couple of years.
Are there plans for adding funding also? Like if I talk about the funding part, additional funding rounds or exploring IPO opportunities for Cyient Semiconductors in the coming future?
The capital structure that for the semiconductor business is very different from the standard other businesses. So we have to make sure that we have the right capital for driving the R&D, driving the relationship with our partners. IPO is not an immediate goal, but we're really building a mindset in the company that is structured, scalable, and performance focused.
When we talk about the ecosystem across the semiconductor sector, pivotally, 2-3 parts plays a very instrumental role. So, to understand about how Cyient is moving forward, so are you also planning any partnership with industry bodies, academic institutions, or skilling platforms to build a future-ready workforce?
Well, just like I said, there's a ton of talent in India, and our focus is really to work with the triple ITs in Hyderabad. We're leveraging the IITs and triple ITs, the BITS in Hyderabad. We're also planning to engage in with skilling platforms and curriculum designers to really create industry relevant programs in analog design verification systems engineering. We need to make sure that the future is ready with the right talent pool, so that we can really kind of absorb them, over the next couple of years as we continue to grow.
To understand about semiconductors, as I said, the chip ecosystem is not a very nascent or a very cupcake kind of a corridor where you can just move around. So, but there are already many big players who have been playing around in this sector for a long time. So, what will be the USP of semiconductors if we compare with the global magnets emerging or say dedicated to this sector?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at I go back to what I said, and what do our customers want? They want working silicon. They also want high levels of integration, smaller form factor, lower power, and smaller area, and really reduce time to market. So I think if you look at a lot of our customers, we give them an option to also integrate their differentiated IP, so they have a differentiated product in the end market. So the higher levels of integrations, the smaller form factors, are really what drives us to be different from the providers, the multinational companies that provide silicon today. At the end of the day, we really are, have excellent talent in the analog mixed signal space. We've taped out like 40 ASICs, and we built a plethora of 600 IP blocks. So you can think of these as Lego blocks that we can really put together very fast to shorten that time to market.
World is moving forward and ahead towards high voltage electronics or say their applications. So, are you capable of doing designs in high voltage processes also?
Yeah, so we should call out what is low voltage, what is mid voltage, and high voltage, because everybody has a different definition of the voltage. When I look at the low voltage stuff, this is really where you're running around 1 to maybe less than 1 to about 3 volts to 5 volts. That's really low voltage. Mid voltage, you're running between maybe 5 to 24 volts, and high voltage, you're running between 24 volts to really maybe closer to the 150 volts. And then you've got a break, and then you've got the very high voltage, which is the 600 volt sort of designs. Our focus is primarily around the 100 to 120 volt type designs, which is really our scope for the custom analog mixed signal power IC space, with the high voltage BCD process that we're engaging with a lot of foundries on.
So, which typical profile are your customers are of? Which end markets are you currently focusing on?
So our focus primarily is around data center infrastructure, which is really power delivery, thermals, which is a big problem for the data infrastructure market, as you know. Really, if you see the growth in the industrial automation space, we see a huge opportunity for us on power reduction, on smart energy space, primarily around meters, inverters, EV chargers, where we see a lot of integration happening, and also on the robotics space as well. We see a lot of integration happening there, just because of all of the value propositions that I talked about before. Where power is a primary factor, that's really our focus.
Too decisive with your answers, Suman. So, as it seems like Cyient Semiconductors is already moving pretty fast in the semiconductor space. So you must be also dealing with many clients currently. So to understand about, are there any rather early client engagements or design wins that you can share to illustrate market traction?
Yeah, a lot of our clients don't want us to disclose their names. We're under NDA, but I can talk about, maybe general markets. We have some good applications in smart metering that we've got good traction in. We've got good applications in medical that with large companies that we have good traction in as well. So I feel good that we're making strides towards ASIC. Now we've got an 8-week start or a 9-week start if you count this week. So we have a lot of work to do to continue to grow that pipeline, and we continue to hire sales to help us, improve that pipeline for design.
Let me tell you, audience, that I had around 14-15 questions for this podcast, and I never have seen completing my podcast so early, which is, but that's how, a person like Suman Narayan you meet, and he's very learned about the facts, what he is talking about. So actually, I'm coming to my last, which is a very personal question. If I hope Suman answers about it. what Suman be found doing while not sharing his CEO responsibilities. And to add to that is, what is your one suggestion you want to add up for the new talent pool and aspiring chaps entering the semi business?
I'm pretty boring mostly because besides semiconductor, I don't know a lot outside semiconductor, but I do enjoy spending taking long hikes with my family and my dog. So that's kind of our decompression towards the end of the day. What I would tell the people who are entering semiconductors is, just remember, Malcolm Gladwell and the book of, like, remember the rule of 10K. In the first 5 years, learn as much as you can and be like the artisan in your craft. I mean, just the rule of 10K is 5 years and 2,000 hours per year is what you want to really focus on and become excellent at what you do. And I'd say that the first 5 years, have a growth mindset, be a sponge, learn as much as you can, and really focus on being ethical and humble, because the semiconductor market is a tough market. But if you're focused on being humble, have a growth mindset, being ethical, and just learn a lot, it'll get you a long way in your semiconductor career.
So, my favorite audiences and my listeners of podcast, as he said, as Suman well said, that it's a process of learning. And Einstein, well, when he was receiving the Nobel Prize, he also said one thing, that what you have learned around in the world, and he said that I'm still, picking few pebbles from the seashore, and the tides are still to come. So this is a process what we have learned, and he was very quick to this podcast. I just felt personally that it was a rapid fire round I just had with Suman Narayan. For the next time, maybe I will have more elaborated talks with him and bring him down to the course, understanding about what he is willing to do and what he is up to with doing in science semiconductors. Till then, keep watching CCTV. That's your lovable coffee club with a Volt. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mil.
Thanks, Suman.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.